Hi people, it's Archivist here, and welcome to Jurassic Park. Or should I say Jurassic World Evolution for the PC, Xbox One and PS4. You're seeing the PC version here. And this is going to be quite a useful game to review because of the slightly quiet nature of this game in its default state. I can really just take you on a tour of my park and use that as a basis to review the different elements of the game. So, Jurassic World Evolution is a sort of tycoon game, but not exactly, in that it has, well, the dinosaurs that make it stand out and the way you have to ensure that they are satisfied so as to avoid them breaking out and eating your guests that distinguish it from games of a similar nature. What I will say straight away is that this game is operationally focused. It's not purely about creating a park that is self-sufficient and runs itself. You do have to intervene. This can be, like I say, as a result of a dinosaur breaking out and you having to sedate it to prevent it going on a massive rampage. It might be something simple like, here's a great one right here. The Velociraptor's meat has run out, so I need to make sure that this is resupplied so they don't get hungry and look for food sources elsewhere. So in order to do that, I'm going to select my ranger station, click on the ranger team, add a task, and they will go to resupply this food supply. Now, this is an interesting thing to demonstrate because it's something that I've seen some people slightly put off by this game on. This is, I'd say, a very micro-intensive tycoon game. There are plenty of tycoon games or even city builders where you can literally just build a superstructure, super organism that is entirely self-sufficient. However, you can never take a step back with this game. You will always have to intervene over time. I mean, this is, for example, just one case of a carnivore feeder, but so I can see from the top that there are multiple food sources that are running out. So I'm going to have to tell my ranger team to go to each of the ones that are running out and resupply them, which, as I'm doing it, probably seems quite benign and, you know, very small. But you have to consider that as the game ramps up and more is going on and you're trying to develop your park while also keeping it running, it can actually be quite intensive. Although this does sharply contrast with the start of some of these levels where it can be admittedly quite dull, right? There's quite a slow initial progression while you have very few dinosaurs, a very small budget, basically not much you can do. Whereas now I'm at the point where my budget is very high, so I can essentially not worry too much about what I spend my money on and just focus on really how I want the park to look. But there are some restrictions, admittedly, in how you can build this game. Another thing I should point out, the area of where you can build is, I'd say, fairly limited on the various islands. So again, we're just looking at the island Isla Muerta here. And you are restricted in terms of the terrain that you build on. You can see there are a lot of slants here which can make it awkward to place new shops. And really the location itself doesn't go out too much. One of the islands, Isla Nublar, which I think is the most famous island in this series, is very large and sprawling. However, that's more of a sandbox by design. Most of the islands are quite restrictive. In fact, this one is probably one of the more open ones. One of the islands, which I'll try and show through some secondary footage, is, ultra restrictive. And it's part of the challenge, to be fair, because a component to designing your park is figuring out where you're going to put your dinosaurs. So probably taking a bit of time to get to the most important factor here, the dinosaurs. Here we are looking at one of my Velociraptors. Now, they have certain needs that you're going to want to meet in order to stop them from going crazy and killing everyone. They have their health, which is dictated by the food they have, which is by the aforementioned feeder I showed you earlier. Also water, you just have to make sure basically they've got enough of a lake there. Their comfort is comprised of multiple features. One of those is grassland. Grassland is effectively the space they have to work in. So, for example, you can't just dump them in a tiny little cage. They will get angry at that. They need, they need an area to roam. Also, there's forest, which is effectively the number of trees in their enclosure. Population, this basically refers to not just other velociraptors, but the number of total dinosaurs in the enclosure. And then finally there's social, which is, well, that is other velociraptors, so other dinosaurs of the same kind. And you'll notice if you look at social, it's got quite an interesting setup here. So where you have red, if you go into this area, the dinosaur will gradually become progressively more agitated. And if you only have one velociraptor on its own, it will get annoyed because they are social animals, and therefore they will try to break out. But on the flip side, if you have too many velociraptors, you'll have the reverse effect where they sort of think they can take over the park because they have so many in number, and they'll just break out anyway. So you have to have the right number of velociraptors. I think I have about maybe 4 in this enclosure. If I look up here, okay, so it's actually 3. And well, if I wanted to add another velociraptor into my enclosure, I would use one of these Hammond Creation Labs, which is you know, effectively the dinosaur factory, and I should have one already prepared here, the velociraptor. So all I need to do now is click release dinosaur, and out pops a ready-made velociraptor, and you have this nice little intro sequence so you can see exactly what they look like. You'll notice that they've opted to use the Jurassic Park look to the Velociraptor rather than the scientifically accurate one. I'm actually quite happy that they chose to do this, although, you know, there is a strong desire from the paleo community to have, you know, scientifically accurate dinosaurs. On the flip side, Velociraptors from the Jurassic Park series are so iconic that it would be disappointing if we saw something a third of the size come out covered in feathers. It just wouldn't have the same effect. So I can understand why they chose to go for film accuracy there as opposed to scientific accuracy. And you can also see they're socializing right now. It will indicate what they're doing. They were just kind of talking, and now they're wandering off. We've also got a herbivore enclosure over here. Similarly, these also have a social need. If you, I mean, don't let the... And this is a pro tip right here, I know firsthand. Do not let the fact that they are herbivores fool you into thinking that you don't have to satisfy their needs. They can cause a rampage as well. They won't eat the guests, but they will knock them over, and you will get sued. And that, by the way, is the consequence to your dinosaurs breaking out. You don't have a situation that would be, let's be honest, hyper-realistic, where if a dinosaur breaks out, everyone leaves and your park closes, because, to be fair, that would be a little bit harsh on the player. No, you just get sued, and that affects your income rate. You can get into a situation if your raptors or whatever eat enough people that you are sued into oblivion, and therefore you just can't run the park anymore. So it can cause you to get locked into a kind of submissive state where you just have no... You have no money to build your park anymore. You've been sued that much. But it isn't like an automatic fail or anything like that. You're also encouraged, as it would make sense, to build things like these viewing galleries so that your park guests are able to see the dinosaurs. So you have some of my park guests here viewing the Giganotosaurus that I've got over here. The Giganotosaurus is noteworthy for being the theropod that is bigger than a T-Rex. It's a Carcharodontosaur that is like, that's its thing. However, and they have committed, I believe, to change this, so this may even be different by the time, you know, you get to the game. The T-Rex for some reason is bigger than the Giganotosaurus, whereas the Giganotosaurus should instead be bigger than the T-Rex. Not by a lot, but enough for it to annoy me a bit, because when I was younger I was really big into dinosaurs, and this was actually my favourite species of dinosaur, the Giganotosaurus. And the reason for that was the fact it was noteworthy for being bigger than a T-Rex, so the fact it's not is a bit like, what? You've taken away the whole reason people like this dinosaur. Also, I'll take a moment here to comment on the animations. You know, they didn't just do this for the top billing dinosaurs. They all look absolutely fantastic, right down to the detail. You know, the way they move, it's seamless. It's truly fantastic. I mean, this is like almost a passion project from the developers. They have really gone all out to make these dinosaurs look and move believably. It's almost like you would accept this level of detail even if this was like a first-person shooter. Oh, and here's an interesting little spectacle we have here. The Giganotosaurus has found a goat, and he is about to eat it. And again, I mean, that is a very clean eating animation. I know that sounds like a crazy thing to say, but like when I first learned that they would be able to eat live bait, I would assume it would kind of have loads of clipping, but that's a very convincing and seamless animation, and now he's going to have a little roar to himself. You'll notice with these larger dinosaurs that typically they don't like to really have any friends at all, but with the Giganotosaurus you actually have a bit of leeway. You can have two in the same enclosure, which is why I tend to use them. We have a storm now coming in, which is a perfect example of where you have to react to events in this game. So one of my structures is damaged, the gift shop. Oh no, not the gift shop. Oh, look, and you can see real-time damage. So I'm going to send one of my ranger teams to go and repair that. So far, that's all that's been damaged. I'm kind of hoping that we don't have any fences broken. Nope, seems to be okay so far. I do have, and you can build these storm defences, which actually increase the resistance of your gates, so they aren't so easily blown down, which is potentially why we're not seeing that, which is great, because that's what I intended to happen. Although, if we kind of get further into this and there's been no breakouts, I will be intentionally unleashing one of my dinosaurs on the guests for purely demonstrative purposes. Also, while you're playing through the game, you have three factions that you work with. You have the scientific community, the entertainment community, and the security community. Effectively, they ask you to do various things for them, and by doing their missions, you unlock new capabilities, new dinosaurs. There are, by the way, as of this very moment in time, I think 42 dinosaurs in the game if you include the deluxe edition ones, but I think they're adding more for Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, so you're going to have even more than 42 very soon, which is a fantastic variety. But in order to unlock them all, you have to satisfy the needs of all the divisions. Also, a situation which has occurred here, my Raptor has, I believe, contracted some kind of a disease. It's got hookworms, very easy to remedy. Again, the ranger team can just go and deal with that. By the way, you, rather than just telling your creatures to do something, sorry, your jeeps to do something, you can actually drive them yourself if you wish. For some reason, my ranger team has got stuck. Actually, it's got a question mark about it, so I'm going to drive it myself. It's actually a good reason to do it. So, as you can see, I'm actually taking control of the Jeep and getting involved directly. I'm just going to very carelessly drive through my crowds there. An awful thing to do. By the way, you may consider this a criticism, but I think it was probably done to just alleviate potential frustration. You are in no danger while you're in a Jeep. A Velociraptor will not attack you. So I'm just going to left click and... Oh. What am I going to do? Oh yes, this is what you do. In order to medicate it, you have to use a dart gun to fire. There we go. So if I just keep firing that at it, it should... Yes, there we go. So now my Raptor is nice and healthy, and we won't have a horrible epidemic on my hands. So we can just release the Jeep and it will automatically return back to base. Which is fantastic. So some of the elements of the game I have not shown yet. Go into this menu here. You have your island rating, which is basically, you know, how well you're doing. So you'll see here that I have apparently poor capacity, which means I should probably build another hotel so that more guests can be housed, which should be no problem at all. In terms of dinosaurs, I've got it pretty good. I've got a lot of variety, lots of different kinds of dinosaur, and they should be able to see them, and I'm looking after them relatively well. So my island rating is... It could be better, and I can certainly take action to make it better, but it gives you an indication of what you can do to improve. Island navigation, so you can see the various islands available to you. Got the the 5, I guess you could call them main story mission islands, where you have to progress through each one to, well, it's kind of like an unlock one, where I'm currently on what would be the 2nd island in the progression system. You've also got one that I actually haven't really done much with. Again, Isla Nublar, which is a sandbox. Essentially, it's just limitless budget and really free building space. I'm just going to come out of this because I've noticed that one of my fences has broken, which is a great way to show what we do in a response to that. Where has my fence broken? Oh, interesting, over here. So, yeah, I'm not surprised because I really haven't been paying much attention. So I seem to have annoyed my Diplodocus here. Although he's not breaking out, he's just smashed the gate. Okay, so this Diplodocus is not too happy because he doesn't have enough grassland. Which is surprising because, I mean, there is quite a lot in here. And this is a criticism I will actually give of the game. Sometimes the needs of your dinosaurs don't quite make sense. Like, for example, although I think this enclosure does have ample grassland, if it wanders into a particular location, it starts to think there isn't enough, and therefore it will try to break out. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and it can actually lead to unjustified breakouts, which are quite frustrating sometimes. The absolute worst for that is definitely the social one, because as I mentioned before, certain dinosaurs need to be in a group in order to be happy. If you don't meet that, then they will start to break out. If you don't get, say, 3 of the same dinosaur in the pen at exactly the same time, they will start trying to break out. So you have to make sure that they come together simultaneously. I think that's something they can probably fix, and they may very well fix. I've got one of my ranger teams on the way to repair this. I've noticed that basically any sauropods, the long-necked dinosaurs, they are very slow to cause any kind of a threat. Over here we have a particularly large one. I've also, funnily enough, I was experimenting with what kind of dinosaurs you can mix up, and I think, unless I'm mistaken, yeah, we do have a carnivore in here with these herbivores, a Metriacanthosaurus. God, some of these names are... I even remember when I was younger, some of these dinosaur names are a pain to say. I think it's Metriacanthosaurus. So I'm presuming the reason he's not attacking the sauropods is simply that he knows better than to try and attack something of that size. He did a bite there, but I don't think that was an actual bite to the tail. I think that was just an animation quirk, because he doesn't seem to be going after the sauropods. So he seems to be quite happy roaming the forests, even though there are herbivores there. But I think if we were to put something a bit bigger, like a T-Rex, it may go after them. Certainly what you don't want to do is like introduce something like a, let's give you a good example here, a Struthomymus, I think. So these are very quick to build, by the way. Well, I shouldn't say build, incubate. I'll quickly talk about the incubation process here as well. Dinosaurs need to be basically dug up. In order to be able to create them, you have to send out expedition teams to various locations around the world. Once you've got a 50% genome, you can attempt to incubate them, but there's a chance they'll fail, a 50% chance. But if you just continue to go out and get more and more fossils associated with a dinosaur, say 100%, then therefore there is a 100% chance that you'll get it to work. So this is about to complete, and we'll release the dinosaur. What I think will happen relatively quickly is it will attract the attention of one of the carnivores, the Giganotosaurus, and he probably isn't going to be, well, I say not too happy, he's probably going to be happy to have a meal. So let's see what happens here. I don't think this fight will last long. Okay, he's decided that he won't have that free meal just yet. I will say that considering these are dynamic AI, they don't always do exactly what you expect. Oh, but in that particular case, he did. So I guess that other Giganotosaurus should have just taken the opportunity when he had the chance, right? Because now he's going to have his dinner there, and he'll kind of eat the Struthomymus. So, what does a breakout look like in this game? So, although you wouldn't normally do this because it would be insane, you can go to one of your gates and just, well, open it. Which probably isn't a good idea if you have velociraptors, but again, you know, you got to demonstrate these things. Funnily enough, as I was talking about the divisions earlier, if you are working with the security division, they do sometimes intentionally tell you to let the dinosaurs out so they can test their evacuation procedures, or sorry, well, not their evacuation procedures, their containment procedures. So they won't necessarily immediately run out. They're not like kind of scripted to see open gate go, but they certainly are more likely to go out. I almost like that the dinosaurs aren't super predictable. It's not like I open the gate and therefore they shoot straight out. They do sort of, I don't want to give the AI too much credit, but maybe they question or debate it. But there is a fair chance they'll wander out. If they break out, they're far more likely just to go straight for the people. But if I have a situation like this, they might just be happy, actually. Now that I think about it, they might just be happy to stay here. Which is, like, annoying. Of all the times they've broken out, I'm trying to get them to go out and eat people, but they're not. Oh, wait, here we go. They're doing a little run. Oh, okay, all at once. See, they're even going as like a pack. I love that. You know, I think they do actually group up. Okay, so now they're out the enclosure. Oh dear. Yeah, Dr. Grant would not be too happy with what we're doing here. Having a little look around. Oh, here we go. Oh, this was the wrong day to come to the park. Yep, yeah, that's not, I mean, that is not what you pay to be here for. So, yeah, that can happen. Usually not from someone intentionally opening the gate. You can actually be sabotaged, where one of the divisions that you're not working with will just open them, which is the scariest thing in the world. Because, like, all your gates open, like, all your carnivores get out. But you can see what happens. And now, okay, how do we respond to this terrible situation where the raptors are running wild? Well, we tranquilize them. So we select our ACU center. We give it a task and we just say, please could you sedate these mad monsters for us. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to close the gate because I don't want them to get out when I put them back in. Also, I'm going to sedate this one to be safe because now that all his friends are gone, you can actually see, look at the social bar there, it's gone into the red. So if I kind of leave him like that, he's going to just break out afterwards. So I'm going to also sedate him. So once they're sedated, they rest here like this. Now, I actually have never seen a dinosaur wake up after being tranquilized. It seems to be, I don't want to say indefinite because I've not done a scientific test, but they do stay there for a while. It might even be until they die. I mean, I'd have to test. I'm sure someone's done it. But then once you've got them like this, you can basically transport them back to their enclosure, and this is effectively what you would do if you if you're in a real world, real game situation of a dinosaur breaking out. I thought there was another one. Oh, there is. I've just forgotten to sedate it, which actually gives me an opportunity to show you that, much like the ranger teams, you can in fact pilot the helicopter. So let's just very quickly do that. Velociraptors are probably one of the hardest dinosaurs to sedate for obvious reasons. They're very small, you know. They go down, I think, with like one shot, but they are small. So it's going to be a bit tricky to hit it, but we'll do our best. Oh, there we go. I think it's administering it, and boom, down. So now we go from that, and we send the transport teams to move the dinosaur back to the pen, and that is what you would call a textbook response to a breakout. Velociraptors are definitely one of the worst ones to get out because they just get through prey so quickly, and well, you're always going to have at least 2 velociraptors in a single enclosure, so they are probably one of the scariest things that can break out. It's worse than a T-Rex. I think it's worse than a T-Rex breaking out. Thing is, whenever there's a storm or something, I actually preemptively sedate my T-Rex. I don't have a T-Rex on this island, but I actually preemptively sedate it because I'm just so afraid of what it's going to do. So I've kind of talked a lot about what you can see in the game, but I think I should also get into some of the wider stuff, and basically, what does this game do well, what does it do poorly, because it's not a perfect game. It's a game I really enjoy. I mean, without a doubt, I love this game, but it's not for everyone. So despite looking a lot like a tycoon game, right, you are making a theme park, the issue is it's not really for people who love tycoon games because you are admittedly quite limited in what you can do in terms of building the actual park. Like I said very close at the beginning, you're limited in terms of the space you have, which means that your creative freedom is... It almost feels like the game's telling you where you have to build structures sometimes. So, you know, there's beyond what I've done already, there's not much more room that I can put anything, and if I do squeeze it in, it's going to look a bit ugly, like it's been intentionally squeezed in. So I definitely say there's an issue with regards to how creative you can be in terms of designing your park. That's, to be honest, that's probably my biggest criticism of the game. Also, what else would I say? There is a criticism, because there aren't too many. The early game can be boring. You spend a lot of time just waiting for things to happen. Like, you wait for your expeditions to complete, you wait for incubations to complete. Barely any things are happening to react to, so you do spend time, like, you'll just be staring at your dinosaurs, which is, hey, it's cool, they're interesting looking dinosaurs, but yeah, the early game, I do forewarn you, can be a bit boring. But I would also say that the longer you stick it out, the more enjoyable it gets, right? So yeah, definitely just kind of get through that, particularly as the dinosaurs get far more interesting, again, like this Giganotosaurus. Another thing, and it's a gameplay element that I didn't really touch on, but seeing as I've just had a power outage, it seems very appropriate to talk about it. Power in the game. You have to provide power to each of your buildings, and it gets very messy. Like, you'll see, I've got loads of pylons throughout this park, and there's just so many of them that they kind of take away from the park feel, and it ends up just feeling like a containment facility. I wish that you didn't have to expose the pylons. I wish it kind of ran underground. Although I know it's in keeping with the theme of Jurassic Park, power cuts have always been a thing. I think, again, it's one of those issues that it kind of hurts your creative freedom. Admittedly, as you play on the substations, which kind of emanate the power, they create these spheres which your buildings go into. Get larger, so you get to place less of them, but even then you can't get away from the fact that you'll be placing a lot of pylons. I can kind of get around placing a lot of power stations because you can kind of put them off to the side, but yeah, there are going to be a lot of pylons. You know, it's a bit of a subjective criticism. Some people might like that. It makes it look like you're seeing exactly how the facility works, but I think it hurts the theme park feel. Also, there are some like very minor animation things, like the way that park goers don't go through open doors. They just walk straight through like you saw it there. He just walked through a texture there. That bothered me the moment I saw it. I wish that the doors were open and they had a black texture and they walked through that rather than walking through a closed door. Very minor thing, but hey, it's just one of those things. It's one of the things that stands out in a game that otherwise captures detail so well. Also, the criticism again is that some of the dinosaur requirements for social in particular is a bit unnecessary. In terms of the overall positives, I think the biggest one, and let's just position the game like this for a second, the graphics. Wow, they are stunning. I mean, just look at the lighting here. Also, the optimization, it runs really smoothly. Sometimes that doesn't always come across when I catch a video via shadow play, but I'll just tell you as I sit in front of this firsthand, it's a very good looking and well running game. If you're curious, this is running, my graphics card is a 1080 Ti, but all the settings are maxed out. I have it to 1080p for the purposes of video capture. I normally run it at 4K. In which it kind of does a 60 to 50 frames per second oscillation thing, even though you've got all these park goers and you've got, and I mean, if you look at them, they're rendering the shadows very nicely. You know, they're not like weird square blobs. They are well detailed considering how many. And I mean, hey, when you get to the dinosaurs and look at their level of detail, even on the smaller ones, I mean, that is utterly exceptional. I think the larger carnivores are probably my favourite, like I showed before, in terms of just, like, that is an exceptional level of detail they've got on there. Also, a neat feature of the game is that you have Jeff Goldblum, who has a bigger role in this game than he does in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, which is nice. So if you're a fan of Jeff Goldblum, and who isn't, you'll appreciate that he has a decent amount to say. I mean, not constantly talking, but he's a prominent figure in the game, one of the most prominent, in fact. I guess something that might, again, annoy true dinosaur purists is that the dinosaurs aren't trying to be as much scientifically accurate as they are Jurassic Park / Jurassic World mythos accurate, but even then they are trying to do a bit of a balance. But And again, I won't make a big deal out of this because they said they're going to fix it. The T-Rex really shouldn't be bigger than the Giganotosaurus or the Spinosaurus. That should be fixed soon. I'd really love to know why they chose to do that as well, because it's just odd. But yeah, overall, I really enjoy this game. I don't recommend it to everyone, but it's an utterly fantastic experience. And although I think it's probably a bit overpriced for the content you get, maybe if a sale comes for this game, it's a no-brainer. If you're a big fan of dinosaurs, like I consider myself to be, then I'd say it is actually worth the price of admission just because it's such a unique and interesting experience for a dinosaur fan. But I'd say for everyone else, maybe keep an eye out for a sale. Appreciate you watching the video and keep an eye out for the next one. Thank you very much.